Start. Hello friends. In this session of fluid mechanics subject, we will discuss the new chapter, that is the fluid dynamics. We already studied the chapter of fluid static, in which fluid is at rest, and we see that how much a force when a fluid is at rest, how much a force is exerted when a plane surface or a curved surface is in contact with the fluid, and when a total body, completely body is under the fluid, how much forces it will act. We already studied that. And in next chapter, that is the fluid kinematics, we study the motion of the fluid without considering the cause of the motion, that is the force. And we study that how the velocity is there, how acceleration will affect the fluid flow, right? What is the continuity equation? First fundamental equation of fluid mechanics is the continuity equation. We already see that. And we see that how the stream function will act, how the potential function will act, right? What is the transformation, translation, rate of deformation, rotational. We already see all of these characteristics of a fluid flow. Now the next chapter of our discussion is the fluid dynamics. In the fluid dynamics, we will study the motion of the fluid, and with that motion of the fluid, we will consider the basic cause of the fluid flow, that is the force. So in fluid mechanics, we will study about the force, what are the various forces act when a fluid is flowing, and how these forces will cause the flow and what are their roles. We will study the Bernoulli equation in this, and the application of Bernoulli equation, that is the Venturi meter or FS meter. We already studied that, what are the various forces act when a fluid is flowing through a pipe, through a bend, what are the forces act. Impulse momentum equation we will study in this. So this is all brief about the fluid dynamics chapter. Now if I say that in a system which is in which a fluid is flowing, right, in which a fluid is flowing, there are various forces which act on that fluid flow. So many forces are there. If I discuss that there is a pressure force, because of the pressure of the fluid, pressure force is there. Gravity force is there. Gravity is present all over. So gravity force is there. Surface tension force is there, right? We already studied that. What is the surface tension? So surface tension force is there. Elastic force is there, right? Because of the compressibility of the fluid, then your elastic force is there. Then viscous force is there. Viscous force is because of the viscosity. There is a friction between the adjacent layers, and that will oppose the fluid flow. So because of that friction, a drag force will come, that is the viscosity. So viscous force is there. If the fluid is in turbulence, then the turbulent flow is there. We already studied what is the turbulent flow, what is the laminar flow. We already studied in the fluid kinematics. So these are the various forces which act in a fluid flow. So if I write that forces act on a fluid flow. When a fluid is flowing, what are the various forces act on that fluid? There are so many forces, right? If I write that there is pressure force is there, gravity is there, gravity force is there. Then we have viscous force is there. Then we have your surface tension force, we can say surface tension force is there. Then we have elastic force because of the compressibility, elastic force is there, which is acting on the fluid. Then turbulent force is there, because of the turbulence, one turbulence force will come. So there are n number of forces which are present when a fluid is flowing. So some of the forces will dominate in a particular kind of fluid flow, and some forces are very, very less. Right, if we say about the surface tension force, or you can say your turbulent force will be there when the fluid is flowing with very high velocity. When fluid is flowing with very low velocity or medium velocity, then turbulence force is very, very less. So in some of the cases, some force will dominate and other force will be very less. So we have different equations for different types of flow, different kind of flow, we can say. So if I say that, if I neglect the surface tension and elastic force, I can write turbulence here so that you will be better understand. Right, there is turbulence force, and here let us say we have surface tension. Right. If I neglect the elastic force and the surface tension force, if I neglect these, so the equation which consider these four forces, that is pressure, gravity, viscous and pressure force, turbulence force, if the equation which consider only these four forces in a fluid flow, the equation which we get is known as Reynolds equation. So Reynolds equation will deal with these four forces, right? So if I say for the laminar flow, if I neglect this turbulent force, for the laminar flow, if I consider only these three forces, that is pressure, gravity and viscosity, then the equation which comes is known as Navier-Stokes equation. So Navier-Stokes equation will deal with only these three forces, pressure, gravity and viscosity. And if I say for the real fluid, or for the ideal fluid, you can say for the ideal fluid where the viscosity is zero, and if we consider only these two forces are present in the fluid flow, that is pressure and gravity, then the equation which we got is Euler's equation. Right, there are three equations, right? Navier-Stokes, Reynolds equation and your Euler's equation. So as per our syllabus, we have to discuss only this Euler's equation. we will solve this Euler's equation. That is the principle, that is the conservation of energy, or you can say conservation of momentum. So we have to discuss this Euler's equation, which is based on the second law of motion. That is, the rate of change of momentum in a particular direction will be equal to the net force acting on that fluid element, right? So as per our syllabus, we will only discuss the Euler's equation. Rest too is not in your syllabus. Just for your understanding, I write here that we have Navier-Stokes equation and Reynolds equation. Now let us start with the Euler's equation. What this Euler equation will say. Stop. Start. Now let us study the Euler's equation of motion, and we will also say that this is the conservation of momentum, right? Conservation of momentum, if you remember the Newton's second law of motion, it says that the rate of change of momentum in a particular direction will be equal to the net force acting on that body in that direction, right? That is the Newton's second law of motion. We will see that how it will applicable to the your fluid element which is in the flow, right? Now let us consider a streamline of, let us consider a streamline. Flow is along a streamline of, let us consider a streamline of steady flow. Flow is steady. That means the motion parameters do not change with time at a particular section. Streamline of steady flow of a ideal fluid, right? So if you see that we have some assumptions here, that is, flow is along the streamline, flow must be steady, and fluid must be ideal. We already see that ideal fluid means no viscosity. That's why I say that in the Euler's equation we are not considering your viscous force, only the pressure and gravity. Gravity is because of the weight of the element, weight of the fluid particle, and pressure force is there. So we are considering your streamline flow, that is, the flow is along a streamline, steady flow, and ideal fluid. Ideal fluid means no viscosity, no surface tension. We already consider no surface tension as an assumption here, and the flow must be incompressible, right? Fluid must be incompressible. We already consider this. So this is the ideal fluid is also one condition is also not incompressible, or you can say incompressible and irrotational, right? Irrotational also is one of the assumption. Let us solve this. You will be getting a better picture when we are solving this Euler's equation. Let us say that if I make a diagram, let us say fluid is flowing along this streamline in this direction. Let us say fluid is flowing along this streamline in this direction, and we want to conserve the momentum. If the fluid is flowing, then some forces are acting on it. So to solve for that, if I consider a very small element in this fluid flow, and if we study the forces acting on that element, and if I apply the Newton's second law, we will get this Euler's equation, right? So for your understanding, I am taking a element in this fluid flow. Let us say this is the element which we are taking. This is a very small element, but just to make you understand the concept, we take it a large element, right? We make it a enlarged view of this element. This is the element. This is a small element of area dA. dA is the area of this small element, right? So if I hashed it so that you will not be confused, this is the fluid element in which we have to apply the Newton's second law of motion, right? This is the element, and I am saying the length of this element is, this length is ds. This length is ds, let us say, and dA is the area of this fluid element. dA is the area of this fluid element, and I am saying that the vertical height between these 2 points, we have 2 points, one point is here, another point is here. So the vertical height between these 2 points are, let us say, this vertical height between these 2 points, because this is a very small element, let us say dz. dz is the vertical height between these 2 points. ds is this incline, this length, original length. This is the vertical height, right? Now if we talk about the forces, let us say, right? So we say that we have 2 forces. One is the pressure force, another one is the gravity force. So you know that if, let us say, this is the center of gravity of this body, center of gravity of this fluid particle or element. So we have a vertically downward force, that is the gravity force, vertically downward force, and that vertically downward force is weight of this fluid element. Weight of this, then let us say that is W. Weight is acting vertically downward, that is W, right? We have some pressure force acting on it. So let us say this is the inlet, this is the outlet, flow is in this direction. So we are considering that, and pressure force is a compressive force, and it is normal to the area. You know this, it is normal to the area. If this is the area, so I am saying, let us say in this direction, we have a pressure, let us say P. P is the pressure at this point. Let us say at this point is 1. At this point, let us say pressure is P. So the force will be P pressure into area, that is P into dA. P into dA is the force in this direction. Here also we have some pressure, right? Pressure is always a compressive force. So it is acting like this, compressive force, right? Let us say here pressure is P plus dP. Let us say here pressure is more than the P plus dP into area is, let us say, dA, right? Into area is dA. So the force will be P plus dP into area, that is dA. So if I resolve this component of W, if I resolve the component of W, we have one component perpendicular to it. This is the component. This is the one component, and one component is along this, right? This is the one component along this, and one component of W will be along this streamline. Let us say this is the component of W along the streamline. Component of W along the streamline. And if I am saying, let us say this is the angle theta. This is the angle theta. So what is the angle theta? Theta is the angle made by this horizontal. This angle is theta, right? This angle is theta. So this line is perpendicular on this, and this line is perpendicular on this. So this angle is also theta. This angle is theta, right? This angle, this inclination angle is theta. If I write this inclination angle is theta, so if this angle is theta, then this angle is also theta. So this component of W will be W cos theta, and this component of W in this direction, if you resolve this, then in this direction, right, in this direction, the component will be W sin theta. W sin theta. This component will be W sin theta. And if you see that this length is ds, this vertical height between these 2 points is, this vertical height is dz, and this angle is theta. So from here you can write dz upon ds is equal to sin theta. Dz upon ds will be equal to sin theta, right? So if you write here P is the pressure on upstream flow. P is the pressure on upstream flow, right? P plus dP is the pressure on this downstream flow. This is upstream, this is downstream. So P plus dP is the pressure on downstream flow. P plus dP. W is the weight of the fluid mass, and let us say AS. I am writing AS. AS is acceleration. AS is acceleration in the direction of streamline. Acceleration in the direction of streamline, right? But what it means, in this direction the acceleration is AS. In this direction the acceleration is AS. Now let us apply the Newton's second law of motion. Newton's second law of motion says that the net change in momentum in the direction of flow, in this direction, the change in momentum in this direction will be equal to the net force in that direction. Along the flow, if we take the Newton's second law, then we can say that net change of momentum in the direction of flow will be equal to the net force acting on this fluid element in the direction of flow, right? So if I write, according to the Newton's second law of motion, according to Newton's second law, this we know from our basics of physics, that what is the, how we can write. According to this, if I take this force in this direction, if I take force positive, in the opposite sense negative, so the total force will be P into dA in this direction. This P plus dP is in this direction, so this will be minus of P plus dP into dA minus of W sin theta. W is in this direction, will be equal to net force, and force will be equal to mass into acceleration. Force will be equal to mass into acceleration, right? Now if we solve it, this is P into dA minus P plus dP into dA minus weight is m into g, mass into g, and mass will be equal to area into mass will be density into volume. Mass will be density into volume. So this is density, volume is dA into ds into g. dA is the area, ds is this, so dA into ds is volume. So in place of W I can write rho dA ds sin theta is equal to mass. Mass is density into volume. Again this will be rho dA ds into acceleration is as. We already did not, as is the acceleration along the streamline, right? So if I solve it, it will be like this. PdA minus PdA will cancel out. This will be minus of dPdA minus ds sin theta. From here ds sin theta is dz. ds sine theta is dz, so I can write here we miss something, g is there, right? G is there, g. So this will be rho g dA dz is equal to rho dA ds, right? We can write here, okay, let us say write ds. Acceleration is rate of change of velocity with respect to time. Acceleration is rate of change of velocity with respect to time. This is like this. So from here, if I write, this is the rate of change of your velocity with respect to time, right? In space coordinate, if you write, if it is in space coordinate, you know that velocity has two coordinates. One is the space coordinate, one is the space coordinate, one is with the time coordinate. So it is dvs by dt. From here, dA will cancel out. This will be equal to minus of dp minus rho g dz is equal to rho into ds into rho into ds into dvs by dt. What is this dvs by dt? Right, that is the velocity has two components. If you know velocity has two components, one is with respect to time, one is with respect to space. If you want to differentiate it with respect to time, if you don't understand, then velocity is a space and time coordinate. If you want to differentiate it with respect to time, we have to take the partial differentiation with respect to space into ds by dt plus dv by del v by del t into del t by del t. This is how differentiation will occur for the if a component is a variable of two functions. It is a variable of two functions, that is s and t. So you can differentiate it like this, right? We know this. So velocity will change with space and with time both. So if you want to differentiate it with time, we have to take the partial differentiation, that is del vs by del s into ds by dt plus del vs by del t into dt by dt. This is how differentiation will occur, right? Now we can say that this will be equal to rho into ds into, now this will be if we can say this will be equal to, and okay, let us say that if we assume the steady flow, assumptions is there, steady flow, we assume that it is a steady flow. You know that for the steady flow, the rate of change of velocity with respect to time will be 0. The rate of change of velocity with respect to time will be 0 for a steady flow. So I can write from here that minus dp minus rho g dz is equal to rho into ds into, this will become 0, it cancelled out. What is this ds by dt? Ds by dt is velocity. So this will be v into, now if one component is 0, we can take it as a complete differentiation, that is dvs by ds, dvs by ds, right? I convert this partial differentiation into total differentiation. If this for steady flow, this del vs by del t is constant. Why we take the complete differentiation, not the partial differentiation? Because now we assume the steady flow, we say that earlier we write velocity is a function of space and time. For steady flow, it is not a function of time, so we can say it is only a function of space. Then I differentiate completely with the space only, right? Because time factor will go 0. So from here you will get that. Minus of dp minus rho g dz is equal to ds will cancel out. From here ds and ds will cancel out. This will be rho dvs into velocity, right? Rho dvs into velocity. If I divide this by rho and take all the side in that side, all this left hand side on the right hand side, and divide it by rho, I'll get dp by rho plus v into dv plus g into dz will be equal to 0. dp by rho plus v into dv plus g into dz will be equal to 0. This is Euler's equation. This is known as Euler's equation, right? You must remember this, that you have to remember this Euler's equation, dp by rho plus v dv plus g dh is equal to 0. And this Euler equation is applicable for steady flow, and our other assumption is your ideal fluid. Our other assumption is ideal fluid, right? It is applicable for steady flow and ideal fluid. This is known as Euler's equation. Now you have to remember this Euler equation, dp by rho plus v dv plus g dz is equal to 0. Now we can say that if I integrate this equation, if you integrate this equation, let us say we integrate this equation, integrating this equation, the equation is integration of dp by rho plus integration of v dv plus integration of g dz will be equal to 0, or integration of 0 is some constant. Integration of 0 is some constant. Now, let us see this equation. This equation is valid for, this validity you must remember, because in the question they will confuse you whether the flow is compressible, incompressible, steady, unsteady, rotational, irrotational. They will give you so many situations that you will wrongly put the equation and your answer will be wrong, right? This equation is valid for steady and compressible flow. Steady and compressible flow, right? Steady and compressible flow. Because we didn't take this density constant till now we didn't take this density as a constant with respect to pressure. We do not take the density as a constant. If you didn't take the density as a constant with respect to pressure, then this equation is valid for compressible flow, right? And now if I take the another assumption for incompressible flow, we are talking about flow, not fluid. For incompressible flow means d rho by dp will be equal to 0. That means density is constant. Density is constant. Density is not a function of pressure. So for an incompressible flow, rho will be taken out. Rho is constant. So integration of dp is p. So it is p by rho, plus integration of v dv is v square by 2, plus g is constant. Integration of z is dz is z is equal to constant. Is equal to constant. P by rho plus v square by 2 plus g into z will be equal to constant, and this is the second fundamental equation of fluid mechanics, that is known as Bernoulli equation. This is known as Bernoulli equations. This is the second fundamental equation after continuity, which is known as Bernoulli's equation. And now the most important thing is assumption of this Bernoulli equation. The assumption of this Bernoulli equation is, we already see steady flow we take because dv by dt we take 0. Next is non-viscous flow, because ideal fluid we have take non-viscous flow or non-viscous fluid, you can say, right? Non-viscous fluid, you can say. Fluid must be non-viscous. If it is non-viscous, it must be irrotational. This is important. This equation is valid for irrotational fluid, not for rotational fluid. We'll discuss it. Next, we take the assumption of incompressible flow. Incompressible flow, right? And one more assumption you take, this is for laminar flow. We take a laminar flow because I am considering the flow along a streamline. Streamline flow is known as laminar flow. They can flow in a particular streamline, in a stamina, in a laminas, you can say. So it is a laminar flow. So this is the assumption of Bernoulli equation, and Bernoulli equation is p by rho plus v square by 2 plus g into z is equal to constant. So you have to remember these assumptions, right? Stop. Start. We already discussed that we already derived the Bernoulli equation, and if I write again the Bernoulli equation will be like this, that p by rho plus v square by 2 plus gz will be equal to constant. This is the Bernoulli equation. We can derive with the help of Euler's equation, or you can say Newton's second law of motion. Now we can say that this equation have some assumptions. We already discussed those assumptions. And if I write here that assumptions again, the most important assumption for this is irrotational flow. So we have to see that why this assumption is important. Now let us discuss that the assumption for this equation is steady flow, irrotational flow, steady flow, irrotational flow, and incompressible flow. Incompressible flow, non-viscous. These are the some assumptions which we take into account for your Bernoulli equation. Now let us discuss why this is like this. We say that we derive this equation along a streamline, right? We derive this equation along a streamline. What happened for rotational and irrotational flow? If I say, let us suppose in this pipe a fluid is flowing, let us say in this pipe a fluid is flowing in this direction, and we have two streamlines. Let us say this is the streamline 1 and this is the streamline 2, right? Let us say that this is the streamline 1 and this is the streamline 2. So if I take 2 points on these lines, let us say I take 1 point here and another point here, right? Let us say this is point 1, this is point 2. So we have some value of, we say that at this point we have P1 by rho plus V1 square by 2 plus GZ1, and at this point we have P2 by rho plus V2 square by 2 plus GZ2. This is some constant C2, let us say, and this is some constant C1. For an irrotational flow, if we talk about irrotational flow, for an irrotational flow, the value of this constant C, the value of this constant is same everywhere. The value of this constant is same everywhere. What does it mean? It means that you can apply this Bernoulli equation between any point, right? For this irrotational flow, if this is an irrotational flow, this value is also C and this value is also C. So for an irrotational flow, you can write P1 by rho plus V1 square by 2 plus GZ1 is equal to P2 by rho plus V2 square by 2 plus GZ2, because these constants are same. So for an irrotational flow, Bernoulli equation can be applied between any 2 points. You can apply the Bernoulli equation between any 2 points in a irrotational flow. But if we talk about for rotational flow, if we talk about these value of this constant C is same only along a streamline. That means for an irrotational flow, you can apply Bernoulli equation only along a streamline. Suppose you have this pipe in which some fluid is flowing. Let us say this is a pipe, this is a streamline 1, this is a streamline 2. So I am saying along this streamline 1, constant is having some value C1, and along this line 2, the constant has value C2. So along this line only you can apply the Bernoulli equation. So if you have this point 1, and between point 1 and 2 you can write, if you apply the Bernoulli equation between point 1 and 2, you have P1 by rho plus V1 square by 2 plus G into Z1 is equal to P2 by rho plus V2 square by 2 plus GZ2, that is equal to C1. But if you apply the Bernoulli equation between these 2 points 3 and 4, suppose you have these 2 points 3 and 4, if you apply the Bernoulli equation between them, then the equation will be, let us say, P3 by rho G plus V3 square by 2G plus G into Z3 is equal to P4 upon rho G plus V4 square upon 2G plus GZ4, and this is equal to C2. This is not equal to C1. So for a rotational flow, you can apply the Bernoulli equation only along a streamline. But for an irrotational flow, you can apply the Bernoulli equation between any streamline, between any 2 points, because in this case, the value of C is same everywhere. So this is the basic difference between the rotational flow and irrotational flow, right? So you have to remember this. Now we have the Bernoulli equation of the form P by rho plus V square by 2G plus G into Z is equal to constant. If you see the units of each and every term, P by rho, V square by 2G, if you see the unit, this is the unit of each and every term is energy per unit mass. Energy per unit mass. If I divide this equation with gravity, G, if I divide this equation with G, then the equation will be P by rho G plus V square by 2G plus Z will be constant by G, another constant, let us say constant. If you see this unit, this is the energy per unit. In place of weight, mass, you have weight, energy per unit weight. And if you see that the unit of each term is your length unit, this is meter, V square by 2G is meter, this is in meters, in the energy per unit weight is a head. So we can say this first P by rho G is your which energy? Pressure energy. This is known as pressure energy. So this is pressure energy per unit weight. This is pressure energy per unit weight, and energy per unit weight is in the form of head, because this is in meters, so these two will be in meters in the head form. So I can say that this is known as pressure head. This is known as pressure head. We already told you that in fluid mechanics we will describe each and everything in the form of head only, that how much head it represents. So this is known as pressure head. The energy corresponds to this in the form of head. This V square by 2G is, this is kinetic energy per unit weight. This is kinetic energy per unit weight, and this is known as kinetic head because of velocity. This Z is known as potential energy per unit weight. Z is potential energy per unit weight. So this is known as potential head. This is known as potential head. So we can say that Bernoulli equation simply means that the sum of pressure head plus kinetic head plus potential head. You know that when a fluid is flowing, it has some velocity, so it has some kinetic energy, it has some elevation, it has some potential energy, and because of pressure, it has pressure energy. So the Bernoulli equation states that, if I give you the definition of the Bernoulli equation, then the Bernoulli equation states that during the steady flow, if flow is a steady, incompressible flow is incompressible with negligible friction. Friction is not there. In the non-viscous fluid is there, non-viscous flow is there. So with the negligible friction, the various forms of mechanical energy are converted into one another, right? It means that during the flow, pressure energy may convert into potential energy may convert into kinetic energy. All these mechanical energy will convert into each other, but their sum will remain constant. So in a fluid flow, if the flow is steady, incompressible, non-viscous, then the sum of potential energy, kinetic energy, and pressure energy will remain constant. It will remain constant if there is no heat and work transfer takes place. That is important, right? If I add the concept of thermodynamics here, so we can say that there should not be any heat transfer, or there should not be any work transfer. If work transfer will be there, then this equation is not valid, right? We will discuss this in case of your turbine or compressor or pump, right? In turbine, when a fluid is striking a blade, it will give some work to the blade, and blade will start rotating. Then how we can apply the Bernoulli equation there, we can see. So just remember that in a fluid flow, for a steady, incompressible, non-viscous fluid, the sum of pressure energy, kinetic energy, and potential energy will remain constant. They may convert it into one another, but the total energy will remain constant, and there should not be any heat and work transfer takes place. No heat and work transfer will be there. That's why Bernoulli equation is also known as conservation of energy. This is also known as conservation of energy, right? So the total energy will remain constant if the flow is steady, incompressible, non-viscous, no friction is there. Then we can say the total energy will remain constant, right? So this is the Bernoulli equation for an ideal fluid. Ideal fluid means we are taking that viscosity is not there, but in actually viscosity will be there. And one more thing, we will discuss it later also, that pressure head plus potential head is known as piezometric head. It is known as piezometric head. Pressure head plus potential head is known as piezometric head, right? So the sum of pressure head plus kinetic head plus potential head will remain constant during the flow if the fluid is an ideal fluid and the flow is a steady flow, right? Stop. Start. We already discussed the derivation of the Bernoulli equation, and we can say that Bernoulli equation is nothing but the conservation of energy, and it states that when a steady, inviscous, incompressible flow is flowing, then the sum of pressure energy, kinetic energy, and the potential energy will remain constant during the flow, and they can convert into each other, they can transform into one another, but the total sum of energy will remain constant. But this equation is only valid for the ideal fluid, right? If the ideal fluid is flowing in which there is no viscosity or the viscous forces are zero, it is applicable only on that flow. So we can say that we will discuss, let us say if the ideal fluid is flowing, if the ideal fluid is under the flow, then we can say the Bernoulli equation between any 2 points in the flow. Suppose in this pipe, ideal fluid is flowing, right? Fluid is flowing in this direction, ideal fluid is there, flow is fluid is irrotational. So we can say at 2 points, let us say this is point 1 and let us say this is point 2, right? It is along any streamline. So we can say that if I apply the Bernoulli equation between point 1 and point 2, the Bernoulli equation will be like this: P1 by rho g plus V1 square by 2g plus Z1 will be equal to P2 by rho g plus V2 square by 2g plus Z2. This is applicable for the ideal fluid when there is no viscosity, so we can say that there is no loss, right? If there is no viscosity, there is no friction, there is no resistance to the flow. So if there is no resistance to the flow, there should not be any loss, so the total energy will remain constant. But if we talk about the real fluid, and if the real fluid is flowing, let us talk about the real fluid which is under flowing. Let us say in this pipe, the real fluid is flowing. The real fluid is flowing in this direction, and if we have some point 1 and 2, let us say this is point 1 and this is point 2. If I apply the Bernoulli equation from point 1 to point 2, we can say that if the fluid is real, then we can say the fluid is viscous. Viscosity is there. And because of this viscosity, we have some friction, we have some resistance. So to overcome this resistance, the fluid must overcome this resistance, overcome this viscosity to flow. So if I can say that if the fluid wants to go from point 1 to point 2, there is friction present between here which can oppose the flow. So to flow, the fluid must overcome this friction. And if the fluid is overcoming this friction, so fluid have to spend some amount of its energy. Fluid must have to spend some amount of its energy to overcome this friction. So if I say, let us talk about that at point 1, the total energy is of 100 units, let us say. And to overcome the friction between point 1 and point 2, the fluid has to do work to overcome this friction. So some of the energy is lost, some of the fluid energy is spent to overcome this friction. Let us say 20 units of energy is gone to overcome this friction. So at point 2, the fluid will reach with the total energy of 80 units. The energy is still conserved, we can say, right? Energy is still conserved, but some of its energy will go to overcome this friction. So we can say that the total energy at point 1 will be equal to the total energy at point 2 plus the energy which is required to overcome the friction, right? So we can say that some energy will decrease. And if we talk about in terms of head, so if I apply the Bernoulli equation between point 1 and point 2, we can say that P1 by rho g plus V1 square by 2g plus Z1, this is the total energy head available at point 1, will be equal to P2 by rho g plus V2 square by 2g plus Z2. This is the total energy which is available at point 2 plus some head loss. Some loss of head is there. We are talking in terms of head, so it is the head loss due to friction. Some head loss will be there due to friction. To overcome the friction, fluid has to spend some amount of its energy. Hence, the energy at point 2 will be less than the energy at point 1, and that energy is known as head loss due to friction. We will discuss that head loss is of various types. Head loss will depend upon the head loss is because of the friction also. Head loss is because of the change of cross section, sudden expansion, if there is sudden expansion, sudden contraction, and so on. So we can say that head loss is of various types. So we can say that here we have some head loss, and that head loss is because of friction also, because of the geometric parameters also, right? If we talking about the major head loss is because of friction, so I write here the head loss because of friction, right? If in the problem you have the head loss because of the geometry, right? If sudden expansion will be there, if there is some bend, right? If sudden contraction is there in the geometry in the pipe, head loss will be there, so you can add the head loss here. So we can say that this is the Bernoulli equation for the real fluid when friction or viscosity is available, and we can represent the head loss with HL. HL is head loss due to friction, right? So this is the Bernoulli equation for the real fluid. Now let us move towards the topic, very important topic, that is the application of Bernoulli equation. Important topic is application of Bernoulli's equation. Bernoulli's equation. We have to study two things. One is the Venturi meter, another one is the orifice meter. So let us discuss. First is very, very important for your gate perspective, Venturi meter. Venturi meter. This is very, very important topic. Question will ask in gate directly from the Venturi meter, and in engineering services also you can find some conventional type of question on this Venturi meter, so you have to pay attention. If I write Venturi meter is a device to calculate the discharge through a pipeline, right? Venturi meter is a device, it is a device which is used to calculate which is used to calculate discharge, which is used to calculate the discharge of a fluid flowing through a pipeline. When a fluid is flowing through a pipeline and you want to calculate, you want to know what is the discharge, then the Venturi meter is used to measure the discharge. Most important concept is Venturi meter. Now let us discuss what is the principle of Venturi meter. I'll write principle of Venturi meter. Venturi meter is a converging diverging tube, right? Venturi meter is kind of a converging diverging tube. Initially the area is decreasing, then area will increase, and there is a throat area in the Venturi meter which has minimum cross section. So you know that continuity equation is valid. So if the area is minimum, then velocity is maximum, and if the velocity is maximum, we can say that total energy will remain constant. So if the velocity head is more, then obviously pressure head is less. If we talk about, let us discuss this. If we talk about this pipe, let us say, right, or for your better understanding, let us say like this, and we'll talk about this line. The potential energy of these 2 points are same. The potential energy, because Z from some datum level is same for these. So potential head is same. Here the area is less, here the area is more. So from continuity you can say that here the velocity is more, here the velocity will be less. If the velocity is more here, so the velocity head is more, kinetic head is more, but the total energy is constant. Suppose the ideal fluid is flowing, so if the total energy is constant, so if the kinetic head is more, then and potential head is same for both of them, so kinetic head is increased from here to here, kinetic head is increased. So this kinetic head will be increased because the pressure head is decreased, because total energy will remain constant, right? You are not giving any energy external from outside, you are not giving any energy. So if the kinetic energy increases in this case, potential head is same. So from where this kinetic energy come? This kinetic energy will come from the pressure head. So pressure head will, some of the pressure head will convert into kinetic head. So the pressure energy here is less. So here the pressure energy is less, here the pressure energy is more. So if I connect a manometer between these two, and that manometer will measure the pressure difference at point 1 and point 2. By measuring the pressure difference of these 2 points, we will be able to measure the discharge between this, right? What is the discharge through this pipeline? We will be able to measure it, right? So this is the basic principle of Venturi meter. So I am saying that reduction in the area at the throat. Throat is that portion where the area is minimum, right? So reduction of the area at the throat results in increase the velocity in the steady flow. If the flow is steady, then velocity will increase based on continuity equation, and this increase in velocity results in decrease of pressure at that point at throat, and this decrease in pressure can be calculated with the help of manometers, and hence discharge can be calculated by measuring this pressure difference, right? So this is the principle of Venturi meter. How the Venturi meter will work is this is the principle. So if I write that reduction in the area of throat results in increase in velocity of flow, results in increase in velocity of the flow in steady flow. If the flow is steady, we are considering the flow is steady. This is from continuity equation. I can say this is from continuity equation, right? Continuity equation. And this increase in velocity results in decrease of pressure, and this decrease of pressure can be measured with the help of manometers. We will apply a manometer, and based on this we can calculate the discharge. Hence discharge will be calculated. Hence discharge can be calculated. So this is the principle of Venturi meter, right? We will now, first of all, let us see how a Venturi meter looks, what are the various aspects, what are the various dimensions of the Venturi meter, and how a Venturi meter will work, and we will derive the equation of the Venturi meter discharge, how we can calculate the discharge in the Venturi meter. Stop. Start. Now let us see how a Venturi meter will work and how a Venturi meter will look like. Let us see this. The Venturi meter is like this. It is a converging then the area is constant, then diverging cross section, it is a converging diverging pipe. And let us see how it works. This is a pipe, right, in which water is flowing. Let us say this is the pipe in which the water is flowing in this direction. This is the direction of flow. This is the direction of flow, and this is the pipe. This is the pipe. And we place a converging diverging section in between the pipe. This is also the pipe, and this is placed this much. This is the venturi meter, right? This is the venturi meter. And let us say that here the area is A1. This area A1 is the area of pipe. Let us say A1, right? A1 is the area of this pipe. And so we have a converging section, then a constant area section, and then a diverging section. So if I write here that this portion is the converging portion of the venturi meter, converging portion. This constant area portion, this portion is known as throat. Throat is that area, throat is that portion which have minimum area. Out of this portion has a minimum area, and this portion is known as diverging section. This portion is known as diverging section, right? So we can say that the flow is in this direction, the fluid is flowing in this direction. This angle is known as the converging cone angle. This angle is known as the diverging cone angle. We can say that the length of the converging portion is less than the length of the diverging portion, and the angle, this angle of the diverging portion is not more than 6 or 7 degree. This angle is very less than the converging angle. This angle is known as the converging cone angle, and this angle is around 22 to 22 degree. This angle is around 22 degree, but here the angle is not more than 5 to 6 degree. Here the angle is not more than 5 to 6 degree, and the length of the converging portion length of the diverging portion is more than the length of the converging portion, or you can say that the diverging portion is gradually diverged. It is gradually diverged, and we will discuss it also in our, then when we discuss about the head loss, when head loss due to the geometrical parameters. The diverging portion is not to make very sudden diverged, right? We are not making the diverging portion like this because there is a chance for your head loss, or you can say there is a chance for the flow separation, right? If I discuss it, what is the flow separation? If I discuss it for just for a brief, if I discuss, suppose the fluid is flowing in this pipe, right? The fluid is flowing in this pipe, and suddenly we have this diverging section, right? Now, just pay attention for a brief, we'll discuss it. What is happening? We always want that the fluid will follow this solid boundary. The fluid will flow along this solid boundary, right? We always want that if there is a streamline like this streamline will be like this. It will always follow this solid boundary. We always want this. But what happen is, if I discuss like this, if I take some streamlines, here, let us say this is the section. After this diverging section is there, and if we take some streamlines, let us say these streamlines, one, this is second streamline. Just for discussion, we'll take only 4 streamlines. Right, the fluid is flowing in this direction. Please pay attention. The fluid is flowing in this direction. Here the fluid is there. Here there is no fluid. Up till now there is no fluid here. Right. Fluid is started flowing from this end. Fluid is flowing in this streamline. Now, when this fluid will come at this point, at this section, when the fluid particles will come, at present they have a velocity in this direction. Right, fluid is flowing in this direction, and the particles will have some mass. So at present, at this section, initially these particles will have a momentum in this direction. But now, when these particles will cross this section, now they have to go in this direction. This line. We are talking, first of all, about those layers of the fluid which are in contact with this solid boundary. So now this layer will have to go like this. That means the fluid particle momentum has to change from this direction to this direction. They have to change their momentum from this direction to this direction, right? And you know that it takes time, some time. They cannot change their direction suddenly, right? They cannot change their direction within no time. If the fluid particles have to change their direction from horizontal to this inclined direction, they have to change. They require some time. They need some time to change their momentum. They need some time, right? So now how the fluid particles will flow? Now the fluid particles, or you can say the streamline, now the streamline will flow like this. If we discuss that now how the streamline will flow, that this particle will not change its momentum from this direction to this direction suddenly. They will require some time. So this particle will move like this. They need some time to follow this. They need some time, right? So I take like this. They will go up to some distance in horizontal, and then they will change their momentum gradually. They have to change their momentum, but they cannot change their momentum suddenly. They need some time. They need some time. So these are the first layers which are in contact with the solid surface. So when they, suppose here, from here they come in contact with the solid surface, so we can say that at these regions there is no fluid. There is no fluid, because this is the first layer, this is the first fluid. If some fluid is there, then that fluid is this layer fluid only, right? But this layer will go up from, this will take some time to change its momentum, so it will go some distance, it will go like this, and after that it will follow the stream. After that it will follow the solid boundary. So here this marked areas, here there is no fluid. Here there is no fluid, and we can say if there is no fluid, there is vacuum, it is moving with some pressure, so the fluid particle will go here. So this eddies will form, loss will be there, losses will come here, and this is known as flow separation. Flow is separated from the solid boundary in this region. In this region, flow is separated from the solid boundary, and this will cause the losses. This will cause the eddy losses, and to avoid these eddy losses, we will make the divergent gradually, so that they follow this, and because they require some time, so that they will not make to change its momentum suddenly. Gradually they can change their momentum to avoid the flow separation. That's why diverging section length is more and angle is less. That is the main reason, right? I hope you understand it. So this angle is around 5 to 6 degree, this angle is around 20 to 22 degree. I'm rubbing it because we need to explain some more phenomena here, so I rub it. Right, you make a note in your notes that these angles will be like this. The length of the converging portion is less, the length of the diverging portion is more, and the angle of the diverging portion is less, and angle of the converging portion is more. You can make it point. Now let us say, when I'm saying this is the fluid is moving, and to study this I take two sections. Let us say this is the section 1. At the entry of the venturi meter, let us say this is the section 1. This is section 1. Right, I rub this because we need to draw something. And at the throat, we take some section 2. Because now we have to apply the Bernoulli equation between 2 points. So I take the entry point as section 1 and the throat as section 2. Let us say this is the datum line. Let us say this is the datum line from which we will measure the height. To measure the potential energy, this is the datum line. From this line only we will measure the distance, right? We will measure the distance. Now, I am assuming, let us say the distance of this point will be Z1 from the datum. From the datum, let us say this distance is Z1 of point 1, and for point 2, let us say this distance is Z2. For section 2, let us say this distance is Z2. And you can see from here that Z1 is equal to Z2 because this is a horizontal venturi meter. But I'll take it as Z1 and Z2 because we need to derive a generalized equation, right? This distance is Z2, this distance is Z1, this is point 1, this is point 2, right? And I am saying, let us say that A2 is the area of throat. I write here, A2 is the area of the throat, A2, right? A1 is the area of pipe in which fluid is flowing, in which fluid flows, and A2 is the area of throat. A2 is the area of throat. Here the area is A2, right? Now, I connect a piezometer. Pay attention guys. I connect a piezometer at point 1 and at point 2. We connect some piezometer. Let us say this is the piezometer which I connect at point 1 and to point 2 to measure the pressure at point 1 and point 2. We have to measure the pressure. We know that when a fluid is flowing from point 1 to point 2, its area is decreasing, and if its area is decreasing, velocity will increase, and if velocity will increase, pressure will decrease. So we have to measure the pressure. So that's why we connect a piezometer. That's why we connect a piezometer to measure the pressure. because here the pressure is more, here the pressure is less, because velocity is increasing, so pressure will decrease, here the pressure will less. So let us say this piezometer, this is a piezometer, this piezometer will give you this much head, and this piezometer will give you this much head. Because here the pressure is more, so the head in the piezometer, rise of liquid in the piezometer is this one. This is the same fluid. This is the same fluid which is flowing in this venturimeter. This is the same fluid. Don't confuse with it that it is a manometric fluid. No, it is the same fluid which is moving in this pipe. Let us say in this pipe fluid is flowing with density rho. So this liquid is also of density rho. Don't confuse with it. Right? And I am saying that the difference in the head of these two, this difference, the difference in the piezometric head, the difference in this piezometric head between point 1 and point 2, this is, let us say, H. This is H. H is the piezometric head difference between point 1 and point 2. Right. And if you see, if you know this, we already discussed this. What is this head from this point? What is this? This one will be P1 by rho g. You know this, right? This head is P1 by rho g. And what is this head? From the center, if you know, this head will be your P2 by rho g. This head will be P2 by rho g. This head is P2 by rho g. Pressure at point 2. You know this, right? Piezometer will give you, and P1, P2 is, you know, this is gauge pressure, not the absolute pressure, because this is piezometer will give you a gauge pressure. So this head is P1 by rho g. This head is P2 by rho g at section 1 and section 2. Now let us start solving this. Now this is the datum. Now apply Bernoulli equation between point 1 and point 2. Start solving. Apply Bernoulli equation between point 1 and point 2. We are considering it as a steady flow, non-viscous flow we are considering, so I am not considering the head loss, right? First of all, I am considering the fluid is ideal and the flow is a steady flow, so I am applying the Bernoulli equation between point 1 and point 2. It will look like P1 by rho g plus V1 square by 2g plus Z1 will be equal to P2 by rho g plus V2 square by 2g plus Z2. This is the Bernoulli equation between point 1 and point 2. This is applicable when, this is important, you know the assumption, this is applicable when steady flow and ideal fluid. You must know this. This is applicable for ideal fluid when viscosity is not considered, right? So this can be written as P1 by rho g plus Z1, take this side, minus P2 by rho g plus Z2 is equal to, this will be V2 square by 2g minus V1 square by 2g, right? And what is this P1 by rho g plus Z1? This is the piezometric head at point 1. We know this potential head plus pressure head is piezometric head. So this is piezometric head at point 1. This is the piezometric head at point 2. You know that in this case, Z1 and Z2 are equal. But if, let us say, if this venturimeter is an inclined venturimeter, it is a vertical venturimeter, then this Z1, Z2 is not equal. So here I can write, I'm not taking that. It's okay, right? We will say that this will be equal to, let us say, H, and I am saying that this H is piezometric head difference. Piezometric head difference. Don't confuse with it. It is piezometric head difference. Here Z1 and Z2 are equal, so you can say it is P1 by rho g minus P2 by rho g. But if it is not a horizontal venturimeter, then it is different. So it is piezometric head difference. So H is not, please understand, H is not pressure head difference. It is the piezometric head difference. I am considering it. So if we talk about the horizontal venturimeter, let us say, you say, sir, if it is a horizontal venturimeter, then you can say that in this case also, in this diagram also, you can say that for horizontal venturimeter, Z1 is equal to Z2. Then you can write piezometric head difference as P1 by rho g minus P2 by rho g. This is okay. Right? But if it is a vertical venturimeter or horizontal, if it is a inclined venturimeter, so we cannot write it is at P1 by rho g minus P2 by rho g. Right? So you have to be very, very clear in this view. Right? So if I can say, if it is an inclined venturimeter, inclined venturimeter, for inclined venturimeter, I can write that this head will be equal to P1 by rho g plus Z1 minus of P2 by rho g plus Z2. You have to use this equation. You have to use this equation, right, for the inclined venturimeter. Now, okay. So we can say that H is the piezometric head, difference of piezometric head. So from here I can write V2 square minus V1 square upon 2G will be equal to H. It is equal to H, right? Now, let us say this is your equation number 1. Let us say this is equation number 1. Now, if I apply continuity equation between point 1 and point 2. Let us apply the continuity equation between point 1 and point 2. So I can write A1 V1 will be equal to A2 V2. Continuity equation, ideal fluid is there, it is incompressible, so you can write A1 V1 is equal to A2 V2. And what is this? A1 V1 is equal to A2 V2 is discharge. Mind it, this we can write for incompressible fluid only. This we can write for incompressible fluid only, and here we are taking the ideal fluid, so it is incompressible, so you can write A1 V1 is equal to A2 V2, and that is equal to discharge, right? From here you can write it, V1 will be equal to Q by A1 and V2 will be equal to Q by A2. V1 will be equal to Q by A1 and V2 will be equal to Q by A2. If I put this V1 and V2 in this equation, then it will be, you put this equation in this equation 1, so it will be, in place of V2, I can write V2 will be Q square upon A2 square minus V1 square, that is Q square upon A1 square is equal to 2GH. Q square you can take common, Q square into, this will be A1 square minus A2 square divided by A1 square A2 square is equal to 2GH, and now you can write discharge will be equal to, take under root 2GH into A1 A2, square is there, if you take under root then A1 A2 divided by under root of A1 square minus A2 square. A1 square minus A2 square. This is the discharge in this. This is the discharge, right? And we know that venturimeter is used to calculate the discharge, so you can calculate the discharge by this. And most important is, this is theoretical discharge. This is theoretical discharge. Why theoretical? This is not practical. This is not actual discharge, because you are considering a ideal fluid. You are considering a ideal fluid, right? In which viscosity is not there. But in actual case, viscosity is there. So if we consider the viscosity effect, then we will get the actual discharge. So this is your theoretical discharge, right? So theoretical discharge will be equal to under root 2GH A1 A2 divided by under root of A1 square minus A2 square. You have to remember this, and also you have to remember this derivation, because in question they will confuse you with this head. They will give you inclined venturimeter or vertical venturimeter. According to this, you have to modify your equations. Stop. Start. So we calculated that the theoretical discharge for the venturimeter will be equal to under root 2GH into A1 A2 divided by under root of A1 square minus A2 square, right? So this is the theoretical discharge. We already derived the equation for this. This is a theoretical discharge. So if we want to calculate the actual discharge, so there is a constant, or you can say coefficient of discharge. There is a constant called as coefficient of discharge. And this can be denoted with the letter CD, that is coefficient of discharge. And coefficient of discharge is termed as the ratio of actual discharge upon theoretical discharge. So CD will be given in the question, so you can write that actual discharge will be equal to CD into theoretical discharge, right? So the value of CD will depend upon venturimeter and the parameters of the venturimeter. So it is given in the question. So actual discharge will be equal to the theoretical discharge into CD, right? And this under root 2G into A1 A2, if you can see from here, apart from this H, G, A1 A2 are constant, right? For this venturimeter, apart from this H, G, A1 A2 will be constant. So this under root 2G into A1 A2 divided by under root of a1 square minus a2 square will be known as Venturi constant. It is known as Venturi constant. So for a given Venturi meter, this a1 a2 into under root 2g divided by under root of a1 square minus a2 square will remain constant, and this is known as Venturi constant, right? So there are some important points with respect to this Venturi meter which we want to discuss. Some important points we'll see one by one, right? The heading will be important points, which they will ask you in the objective or interview questions. Important points. Important points. First one is, we can say that if the flow separation will occur here, then there will be more losses. Then we can say it leads to the energy losses. Hence, the value of CD is less if the losses are more. If the losses are more, then the actual discharge will be less, because you know that if we will calculate the actual discharge, we can see that this CD will depend upon the head loss due to friction, total head loss which will be in the Venturi meter, which will occur in this process. Then it is depending upon the head loss. So if the losses are more, then the actual discharge will be less. So this value of CD will be less. So we can say that if flow separation occurs, first important point is, if flow separation occurs, it leads to more energy loss. More energy loss leads to low actual discharge, and because of that the CD value will decrease. Right? So we can say if the flow separation is not there, then the value of CD is almost equal to 0.98, right? If there is no flow separation, then the value of CD, you can take it approximately equal to 0.98, right? So the actual discharge will be approximately equal to the theoretical discharge if there is no flow separation. Third point, in the interview they may ask you that, can we decrease this throat area up to a certain limit? Can we decrease it throat area further? We cannot decrease the throat area up to a certain level, right? We cannot reduce the throat area up to a certain level, because at the throat we can say that the velocity is maximum and the pressure is minimum, right? So if the pressure is minimum, if you reduced it up to a certain point, then at that time the pressure is so less, that it will reach to the vapor pressure. We already see that what is the vapor pressure, and because of vapor pressure what happen is your cavitation. So if we can say that if there occurs the vapor, if vapor will be here, if vapor will form here, then during the flow, if this is a diverging section, so diverging section means velocity will decrease because area is increasing, so velocity will decrease. If velocity decrease, then pressure will increase. So if bubble will form here, vapor will form here, it will go to the high pressure area and it will burst and cavitation will occur and erosion will be there. So we cannot afford the vapors to form in the throat area. So the throat area cannot be reduced after a certain extent, otherwise pressure will be less than the vapor pressure and they can reach to the high pressure region in the diverging section and the cavitation will occur. So to avoid this cavitation, we cannot decrease the throat area up after a certain limit, right? So I can write cross section area of throat cannot decreased or reduced after a certain level, after a certain limit, otherwise pressure at the throat will be less than the vapor pressure at that temperature. We already see the vapor pressure concept, will be less than the vapor pressure and cavitation will happen. Cavitation, we already discussed cavitation, and if vapor pressure reach, then the cavitation will happen. And to avoid this cavitation, we cannot decrease the cross section area of the throat up to after a certain limit. Now, in some of the interviews, they may ask you that why we cannot use the diverging portion to measure the discharge, why only we are using the converging portion. The diverging portion is not used to measure the discharge because there is a chance of loss here. We will discuss it later when we discuss the losses, right, head loss. We will discuss it in the converging portion. There will never be any loss. Because of the geometrical shape, there will not be any loss in the converging area. The losses will be in the diverging area only. So that's why diverging portion is not used. Diverging portion is not used to calculate discharge. because of possibility of losses. Because of possibility of losses. Losses possibility will be there in the diverging portion. That's why we cannot use this, right? Hence, to avoid this flow separation, we already discussed that the diverging portion will be gradually expanding. It will be gradually expanding. You cannot make this diverging portion sudden expansion. If you make this as a sudden expansion, then definitely flow separation will occur. There will be more losses. If there will be more losses, then the discharge is very, very less. Then the discharge will be very, very less. Now we have to see what is the head loss when the fluid is a real fluid. Let us discuss about real fluid. If in this venturi meter, instead of this ideal fluid, real fluid is flowing. If this real fluid is flowing, so I can write from here, I can write that, apply the Bernoulli equation between point 1 and point 2, it will be, pay attention, P1 by rho g plus V1 square by 2g plus Z1 is equal to, it will be P2 by rho g plus V2 square by 2g plus Z2 plus head loss. Plus head loss. Head loss will be there, right? Head loss will be there. So from here you can write, this P1 by rho g plus Z1 minus P2 by rho g plus Z2 minus head loss will be equal to V2 square by 2g minus V1 square by 2g, right? This is H, we already see this is piezometric head difference. So this is, we can say that H minus HL will be equal to, in place into 2g, you can write, in place of V2 I can write Q square upon A2 square, minus in place of V1 I can write Q square upon A1 square, right? So this will be, now this discharge is the actual discharge. Now this discharge is the actual discharge because we consider the head loss. This will be equal to under root 2g into, in place of H we have head loss, H minus HL. In place of H, you have now H minus HL because that is the head loss. Head loss due to the friction, due to other parameters into A1, A2 divided by under root of A1 square minus A2 square. This is actual discharge. This is actual discharge. You know the theoretical discharge, this one. If I divide this, Q actual upon Q theoretical, if you see from here, everything will cancel out, only under root H minus HL and under root H will remain. So this will be under root of H minus HL upon H, and this is known as coefficient of discharge. This is known as coefficient of discharge. So that's why I told you earlier, if the head loss is more, if the losses are more, then the CD value will be less. This first point, right? If the head loss is more, then the value of CD is less. If the value of CD is less, then the actual discharge will be less. So that's why we always want that there should not be any flow separation at the diverging portion. So this is the coefficient of discharge, that is under root H minus HL divided by H. Right. Stop. Start. Now we already see the actual discharge and the theoretical discharge in case of the venturi meter, and we say that the discharge will be equal to under root 2gh into A1 A2 divided by under root of A1 square minus A2 square. Now the problem is to find this H. H is known as the piezometric head between this point 1 and point 2, piezometric head difference. Now how to calculate this H? So generally we connect a U-tube manometer in this, because if the fluid flow of the fluid is, velocity of the flow is more, then this piezometric head will go more, right? If the pressure is more, then they will go very large piezometer you want. So that's why to avoid this, we connect a U-tube manometer between point 1 and point 2, in which we fill a manometric fluid. So now let us find out the head in terms of the deflection of the manometer, right? So we can say that I place a U-tube manometer between point 1 and this point 2. Let us say this is the U-tube manometer. Pay attention, we already see how to solve for the manometers. Just for your understanding, we'll make this, otherwise we already know how to solve this. Let us say this is the, unnecessary thing I already rubbed the, this is the U-tube manometer which we placed between point 1 and point 2 to calculate the piezometric head between point 1 and point 2. Right, this will be easy for the high pressure fluids, if the pressure of the fluid is more, because to connect or to measure the piezometric head with the help of piezometer, these two piezometers are very difficult. That's why we connect this manometer. This is a U-tube manometer in which a manometric liquid of density more than the density of the fluid which is flowing. Right, it is open from here. open from here, right? This is a YouTube manometer. Now pay attention, guys. The fluid is flowing with the density rho, and I am saying rho m is the density of manometric fluid. Rho m is the density of manometric fluid, and first case we assume that manometric liquid is of density more than that of this density rho. Rho m is more than rho. You know one thing very clearly, pressure at this point is more than the pressure at point 2, because here the velocity is more, pressure is less. Here the pressure is more because the velocity is less. So pressure here is more than the pressure at this point. So the manometric liquid will rise in this limb more than here, right? This is a basic concept, we know this, right? I'm not going to say again and again. Let us say this is the manometric liquid level in this right limb, and this is the manometric liquid level here. So we have a manometric liquid. This is the manometric liquid of density more than the density of the fluid which is flowing. Right, this is the manometric liquid. And let us say we measure the difference of the level of the manometric liquid in the both limbs, and this is manometric liquid of density rho, right? And I measure the difference of the manometric level. Let us say this difference is y. This difference is y. Right. And let us say this height from the center line, this height is x. This height is x. Now, pay attention. We know that the theoretical discharge, if we talk about, is equal to under root 2gh into a1 a2 divided by under root of a1 square minus a2 square. Right. Let us first of all talk about this head h. If you remember the derivation, I say that for the horizontal, okay, for the horizontal venturimeter, I say that this is P1 by rho g minus P2 by rho g. Pay attention, guys. This is the concept here, right? We already told you that pressure can be written in the form of head, any energy can be written in the form of head. Your concept of the fluid mechanics will work here. What is this? This is the piezometer, or the, you can say, not forget about piezometer, this is the pressure head difference between point 2 and point 1 in the head of liquid rho. If we take the head of liquid, this much head of the liquid rho which is flowing in this pipe, if let us say this is 1 meter, so 1 meter head of this liquid rho will give you the difference between the pressure head of point 1 and point 2, right? But what is this y? This y is also the head of pressure difference between point 1 and point 2, but in the head of manometric liquid. This is rho m. In the head of manometer. This y is the head of this manometric liquid, but this h is the head of this fluid which is flowing. They are not the same. You cannot write here under root 2g h in place of h, you can write y, no. Because there is a basic difference between those. This is the head of this fluid rho of density rho. This is the head of fluid of density rho m. They are not equal. So that's why to put this y in this equation under root 2gh, I have to convert this y in the head of density rho liquid. We have to convert the y in the head which is equivalent to the head of this density, equivalent to the head of this fluid of density rho, right? Basic understanding. They are not the same, because this is of manometric liquid. This we want the head of this fluid which is flowing. We want this. So apply the manometric equation. Let us apply the manometric equation. Write the manometric equation. We know how to write the manometric equation, right? Started from this point. Let us say this is point 1, this is point 2. Starting from the point 1, right? Pressure at point 1 is, let us say, P1. If we go down, pressure will increase. So plus, here which fluid is? This fluid of density rho. Here fluid is there, but which fluid? Of density rho. Here also fluid is there. Which fluid? Of density rho. So of density rho, so this will be plus rho g into this distance. How much is this distance? X plus y. X plus y. You reach at this point. You can jump from this point to this point. Same liquid, same height, pressure same. So from here I can jump here. From here I have to go up to this point. If you go above, then it is minus. Now density, which density? Rho m. G. Height is y. You reach here. From here you can go here. This is of density rho. If you go above, minus rho g x. Where you reach? P2. Where you reach? P2. Right? Okay. So rho gx minus rho gx will cancel out. So here you will get P1 plus rho gy minus rho mgy is equal to P2. From here you can write P1 minus P2 will be equal to rho mg or rho m minus rho into g into y. Right? I want divided by rho g, divided by rho g, divided it by rho g, because we want P1 minus P2 by rho g. I want this. So divided it by rho g. So g and g will cancel out and this will be equal to, this is what? H. This will be equal to rho m upon rho minus 1 into y. Minus 1 into y. So in place of head h, you can place rho m upon rho minus 1 into y. You know this y. Rho m, rho you know. So in place of h, you can write this and then your answer will be correct. Right? Then your answer will be correct. Now one more important thing I want to say. This is for horizontal venturimeter. If it is an inclined venturimeter, then you don't need this. You need, what you need here? You need the piezometric head difference, P1 by rho g plus Z1 minus P2 by rho g plus Z2. You need that. So apply the Bernoulli equation correctly, right? Don't go blindly with this. This is valid for horizontal, where you need P1 minus P2 upon rho g. For the inclined and vertical venturimeter, you don't need this. What we need in that case, we need P1 by rho g plus Z1 minus P2 by rho g plus Z2. We need this, right? So don't put this blindly. Apply the Bernoulli equation and apply this manometric equation with your head or mind open, right? Don't go blindly this. This is for horizontal venturimeter, where we want P1 by rho g minus P2 by rho g, right? This is when rho m is greater than rho. In some of the case, instead of this venturimeter, they will give you the venturimeter above, inverted U-tube venturimeter, when rho m is less than rho. So when rho m is less than rho, then the equation will be same only. H will be equal to y into, sign will change, 1 up minus rho m upon rho. 1 minus rho m upon rho, right? Because in that case, this will be less than 1. So sign will change, obviously, but the equation will be same, right? So just remember, rho m will be greater than, if rho m is greater than this equation, if rho m is less than this equation. So this is how you can measure the velocity, measure the discharge in case of venturimeter, and measure this head y in terms of, now this is the head of, this is the pressure head in form of y for the liquid of density rho, right? We convert the head of y in terms of the head of the liquid of density rho, right? This is how you can convert it. Right, this is all about venturimeter, and you can solve the question. We will discuss some of the important questions on the venturimeter so that your concepts will be very, very strong. Stop. Start. In our previous discussion, we see the application of the Bernoulli theorem, that is the venturimeter, and venturimeter is used to calculate the discharge of the fluid which is flowing through a pipe, right? Now in this lecture, we will discuss the second apparatus or second device, that is known as orifice meter. Orifice meter is also used to measure the discharge through a pipe. It is also used to measure the discharge through a pipe. So in the orifice meter, we have a circular plate with concentric sharp edge, with sharp hole is placed in a pipe such that the plate is perpendicular to the axis of the pipe. So let us say that in this pipe, our fluid is flowing. Let us say fluid is flowing in this direction, right? In this direction, your flow is there. So in this pipe, we put a concentric plate. This is a plate. This is a circular plate. This plate is a circular plate in which we have a hole. This is a hole in the pipe. In this plate, this is a hole. This hole is sharp edged. That's why we make this like this, right? Sharp edged hole. And this is placed in the pipe such that the plate is perpendicular to this axis of the pipe, right? This plate is perpendicular to the axis of this pipe. So with the help of this orifice meter, we will be able to calculate the discharge which is flowing through this pipe, right? So if we compare this orifice meter with the venturimeter, we say that it is a cheaper arrangement than the venturimeter, because you know that in the venturimeter we have to take a converging diverging section. So the cost of manufacturing of that converging diverging tube is more rather than this circular plate with a hole. So this is a cheaper arrangement than the venturimeter. And we can say that in this case only a small length of the pipe is affected. Only this much length of pipe is affected in this case of orifice meter. But if you see in case of venturi meter, a large amount of pipe, a subsequent amount of pipe is required to install that venturi meter inside the pipe. So if we have some area constraint, right, if we have some space constraint, right, we will not be able to put the venturi meter between the pipe. If we have that much of space constraint, then we can use the orifice meter to measure the discharge. But the disadvantage with the orifice meter is, in this case, head loss due to flow separation is more. This is a major disadvantage, right? If I write in the case of orifice meter, your head loss due to flow separation, head loss due to flow separation is more than the venturi meter, right? This is the major disadvantage of the orifice meter. So we can say that in this case, the actual, if I write the actual discharge is very less than the theoretical discharge, right? In the case of your venturi meter, you may know that the value of the coefficient of discharge is around 0.97 or 0.98. This is approximately equal to 1. But in this case of orifice meter, the value of coefficient of discharge for the orifice meter is around 0.5 to 0.62, right? So this value of CD is very less, or we can say this value of CD is very more, right? This value of CD is more than the value of coefficient of discharge in case of venturi meter. So we can say that this is the only disadvantage with the orifice meter, that its actual discharge is very, very less than the theoretical discharge. So if we have space constraint, then only we can use the orifice meter. Now let us see that how this orifice meter will work, how we will be able to calculate the discharge. So if I can say that, if let us say A1 is the area of this pipe, right? Let us say that A1 is the area of pipe. Pipe area we know, right, in which this fluid is flowing. This is the A1 is the area of this pipe, and I can say that A0 is the area of orifice plate. A0 is the area of the orifice plate. So we can say that when a fluid is flowing in this pipe, then after coming here, after coming at this section, at the entry of this orifice plate, the streamlines will contract. Here the streamlines will contract and then it will expand. Why the head loss is more? Because of flow separation in case of orifice meter, because in the venturi meter, the divergent section is gradually increasing. It is gradually increasing, and I told you that the divergence cone angle is around 5 to 6 degree. So it is gradually increasing. But here, if you can see, from here you can see that the divergent angle suddenly increased to 90 degree. The divergent angle suddenly increased to 90 degree. There is a sharp increase of the divergence angle, and because of that, the flow separation will occur. And we will discuss in our discussion that when we will discuss the head loss due to the sudden contraction, that because of this sudden contraction, there are flow separation, or you can say there are eddies formed. If I explain you why this is the case, let us say that, suppose, right, just for your understanding, I am saying, just I will make another diagram here. Right, will not make this because, right, this is the axis of the pipe. Here we have orifice plate. Just for your understanding, I am making this, just pay attention why the head loss is more in case of orifice meter. This is the orifice plate. Now suppose one streamline is flowing in this direction. This is the streamline in which fluid is flowing, and this is the another streamline. And I'll explain to you, right, in our discussion that when see how the fluid will flow. Now if you see the streamline pattern, the fluid must come like this, parallel to this. After this it has to turn. After this it has to turn, right, because there is a divergence, there is a convergence. Here the streamlines will converge. Why? Because this is a very restricted hole is there, so the streamline will converge. So we'll explain that. Let us say this is the streamlines. This is the streamlines, right? And we will discuss in our discussion that here eddies will not form because we have fluid here. We have fluid initially when the fluid will start flowing. So this, if I draw these streamlines very close to the boundary, so these will like this. These streamlines, if I draw it very close to the boundary, so they will turn like this. They have to flow from this, right? They have to turn like this. So this area, if I talk about this area and this area, here you can say that, sir, if this is the first streamline which is in contact with this solid or adjacent to this, so if it turns, then there should not be any fluid here. But no, this is not the case. When the fluid will start flowing, here the fluid will deposit. Here initially this fluid will deposit here, and these area will act as a solid wedge. This fluid which is present here, this liquid which is present here will not move, it will act as a solid wedge. Right, it will act as a solid wedge. Here the losses will not be there. Here eddies will not form because here water is present. But now what happen is when this streamline will start flowing, so what happen is, because here there is no water initially, here we have some water or liquid here, so these areas will fill with that fluid, right? Here it is not the case, because here water is not there initially, water is coming from this side. Let us say I am saying water because we are assuming that water is flowing through this tube or through this pipe. So when the water will come in this direction, suppose it is closed. Let us say initially it is closed, so water will fill this and water will fill this. This areas are also filled with water, and when you open this orifice meter or this hole, when you open this, then water will start flowing in this. So here the water will remain, and these water will act as a solid wedge. Now I can say that, suppose if we talk about this layer, initially now when at the entry of this, these solid particles, these fluid particles will have a momentum in this direction. They have a momentum in this direction, right? They have a momentum in this direction, and these fluid particle will have a momentum in this direction. They have a velocity in this direction. They have a velocity in this direction. So now what the fluid has to do? Now the fluid has to change its momentum from this direction to this direction, right? In the ideal case, the fluid will move like this. The fluid must, if there is no flow separation, we want the fluid layer will flow like this. This must be the streamline. This must be the streamline. So no separation, no vacuum must be there. So to change the momentum from this direction to suddenly in this direction, this is a very huge angle they have to change. It takes time. It takes time. They cannot change this. This angle is more than 90, right? They cannot change this angle more than 90 angle suddenly. It takes time to change the momentum of a body, of a fluid particle. It takes time. Some time is required, right? So we can say that it is not possible to change the momentum like this. So it takes time. So the streamline will flow like this. If we explain to you, right? We will explain it later also. The streamline will flow like this. I remove this, right? I hope you understand that there is a water here. There is a water, or that fluid which is flowing is present here. There is no eddies. Now, please pay attention. So I can say that these streamlines will flow like this. For some time they flow in this direction only, and after that they will take this shape. After some time they will take this shape. Similarly, this streamline will flow like this. It will go in this direction only up to some distance, then gradually they can change their momentum in this direction. Gradually they can change their momentum in this direction. So this is the flow of this is the pattern of the streamlines which is going, like this is the pattern of the streamlines. So these are the first streamlines which are going. So here we have no water or no fluid. Here we have no water or no fluid, right? So the flow separation will occur in this hashed areas. Here the flow separation will occur and losses will be there. In Venturi meter, we avoid these losses by making the divergence angle very gradually increasing. 5 to 6 degree we can make this, but here we cannot avoid these flow separation. They must have to separate because they cannot change their momentum suddenly, right? So that's why I can say that in this case the loss due to flow separation is more, and because of this only this coefficient of discharge is very high, right? This coefficient of discharge is very high, and you can see from here that in the flow lines, this area, this minimum area at this point, some minimum area cross section will make. This minimum area, this area is known as throat, right? We can say that where the area in the flow field, where the area is minimum, that area is known as throat. So this is the throat area. This is the minimum area, and in orifice meter, this is known as vena contracta. This is known as vena contracta. That minimum area which we termed as throat in case of Venturi meter, here we can term it as vena contracta. So vena contracta will form after this orifice hole. After this plate only it can form. It will go in this direction up to some distance, then they will diverge, So this is the minimum area, and this minimum area is known as vena contracta, right? This minimum area is known as vena contracta. So if I show the streamline here, these streamlines I show here, I rub this. I hope you understand that why vena contracta will form and why the losses are more in case of orifice meter than the Venturi meter. So if I show the vena contracta in this, if I show the streamlines flow, I rub this axis so that we can make it more clear. Suppose this is the streamline which is coming, and they will go like this, right? Similarly, there are one streamline is coming in this direction from the bottom, and they will go like this, right? This is the flow of pattern of the streamlines which is coming. This is the bottommost streamline. This is the topmost streamline, right? And I can say this area, this minimum flow passage, this minimum area is known as vena contracta. This is known as vena contracta, and now we can draw this axis if you want to. Right, this is the axis of the pipe. Now I hope you make understand that this why vena contracta will form, and I can write here. Let us say A2 is the area of vena contracta. A2 is the area of this vena contracta. Now I want to measure the discharge, and I know that how to measure the discharge by measuring the pressure difference between these two. So if I apply the Bernoulli equation, we have to take two sections. Let us take one section of this pipe. Let us say this is the section 1. This is the section 1. And at this vena contracta, we'll take another section, that is the section 2. Right? In the orifice, in the venturimeter also, we take the throat as a section, because here the pressure will be minimum. Because velocity is maximum at this vena contracta, because the area is minimum at the vena contracta, so velocity is maximum at the vena contracta, so the pressure is minimum at the vena contracta, so we can measure the that manometric height will be good and the results will be better if I take the axis section at the vena contracta. So let us solve for this. Let us apply Bernoulli equation between point 1 and 2. Let us apply the Bernoulli equation between point 1 and 2. It will be, we are considering the steady flow and each and everything we are considering. Let us say P1 by rho g plus V1 square by 2g plus Z1 is equal to P2 by rho g plus V2 square by 2g plus Z2. Right, we are considering the ideal fluid flow. And as you know that to measure the area of this vena contracta, it is next to impossible, because we can say it is not a transparent pipe. It is not a transparent pipe, and also you cannot measure this area, right? But we know the area of this orifice hole. This is not the plate area. This is the area of the orifice hole, right? We know the area of this orifice hole, but we don't know the area of this vena contracta. So we have a term that is known as the coefficient of contraction. We introduced a constant that is known as coefficient of contraction, and that is denoted by Cc, that is coefficient of contraction, and it is equal to A2 by A0. Right, this is known as A2 by A0, that is the area at the vena contracta divided by area of this orifice hole. So if we know the coefficient of contraction, we know this A0, so we will get this A2, right? So we defined a term here. Now this is the thing. Now if I write it like this, you know how to solve this. This will be P1 by rho g plus Z1, same derivation as we did in venturimeter. P2 by rho g plus Z2 is equal to V2 square minus V1 square upon 2g. V2 square minus V1 square upon 2g. And you very well know that up to now you know that what is this? This is piezometric head difference. This is piezometric head difference, which we known as H, which we termed as H, as in venturimeter. So from here you can write H is equal to V2 square minus V1 square upon 2g. V2 square minus V1 square upon 2g. This is the piezometric head difference we know. After this, what we did in our venturimeter, if you remember, after this we apply the continuity equation. After this we apply the continuity equation. Now apply the continuity equation. So if you apply the continuity equation between point 1 and 2, it is known as, it can be written as Q, discharge will be equal to A1 V1 is equal to A2 V2 if I take it as an incompressible flow. If I take it as an incompressible flow, so discharge will be A1 V1 is equal to A2 V2. So from here I can write V1 is equal to Q by A1, V2 is equal to Q by A2. If I put it here, so it will be equal to, from here it will be equal to, you can write 2GH is equal to Q square upon A2 square minus Q square upon A1 square, this is the thing, and Q2 is equal to, discharge is equal to, Q is equal to, you know this, under root 2GH into A1 A2 divided by under root of A1 square minus A2 square, A1 square minus A2 square. The similar relation as we got in the Venturi meter, we got here because the equations are same, the systems are same, the orientation are same, each and everything is same, so the equation will be same. So if I write this Q is the Q theoretical, this is the Q theoretical. So if I write in place of A2, I can write Cc into A0. In place of A2, I can write Cc into A0. So this will be A1 into Cc into A0 under root 2GH divided by under root of A1 square minus Cc square into A0 square. Right, so this is a theoretical discharge in case of Venturi meter. This is the theoretical discharge in case of Venturi meter. Now pay attention, no need to remember this equation. You remember this equation because the equations are same in Venturi meter and orifice meter. But only in place of A2 you can write A0 into Cc. You know this relation you know. So from in place of A2 you can write Cc into A0. So just for your understanding, I will take this. You must remember that we take two sections, one is in the pipe, one is in the vena contracta. So A1, A2 will be the same. There we have A1 in the pipe, A2 at the throat section. So that's why don't confuse. A2 is the area of vena contracta here. A2 is the minimum area. You can remember like that. A2 is the minimum area. So you can remember this. And how to calculate actual discharge? Actual discharge will be equal to coefficient of discharge into theoretical discharge. You know this, right? From the definition of coefficient of discharge, actual discharge can be calculated, that is equal to coefficient of discharge into theoretical discharge. So this is how you can calculate the discharge in case of orifice meter, and from where this H come, H is the difference of piezometer. Now what you have to do, you have to install a manometer here. And the same relation will come, that is Y. If the manometric reading is Y, then Y will be equal to H into rho minus 1. Right? The same equation will be there if Y is the manometric height. If I write, let us say if you apply a manometer here because you want to calculate this piezometric head, right? You want to calculate this. So in that case, if you take the Y is the manometric reading. If Y is the manometer reading, so you know this, the same equation you can apply here. Then you can write H will be equal to Y into rho m upon rho minus 1. This is applicable when rho m is greater than rho, and this will be equal to Y into 1 minus rho m upon rho, and this is applicable when rho is greater than rho m. Same manometer will be there, same equations will come, right? So this is all about the orifice meter, and you can solve any question on the orifice meter, right? So this is the thing. Just remember this H is the piezometric head. If it is horizontal, then Z1 is equal to Z2. If this is not inclined, and if this is inclined or vertical, then they will change, right? Then you have to take this H as P1 by rho g plus Z1 minus P2 by rho g plus Z2. And in some cases that coefficient of velocity is also given, right? There is a term known as coefficient of velocity. We will explain it later also. There is a term known as coefficient of velocity, that is CV, right? Because the coefficient of velocity, the meaning of the mathematical relation is actual velocity upon theoretical velocity. Actual velocity upon theoretical velocity, because the velocity, as we know from the continuity equation, is not like that, because there are some losses, there are some frictions are there, losses are there. So actual velocity upon theoretical velocity, and just remember this coefficient of discharge will be coefficient of contraction into coefficient of velocity. This is the coefficient of discharge, right? Coefficient of discharge will be coefficient of contraction into coefficient of velocity. We will explain it also later on, we will explain it, but you can remember if somehow in some of the cases that CD is not given but CV is given, then you can calculate the CD from this formula. So this is all about the orifice meter, and we will solve some examples so that you will be able to better understand how the orifice meter will work. Stop. Start. In this session, we will discuss about the basic concept of static and stagnation pressure. Right? We will see that what is the difference between static and stagnation pressure. So first of all, let us see that what is the static pressure. Static pressure is that pressure, or you can say it is a thermodynamic or hydrostatic pressure caused by the collision of molecules. The pressure which we studied up to now is the hydrostatic pressure, and that pressure is known as static pressure, right? As you know, that pressure is caused because that molecules are colliding with the wall. Suppose if on this whiteboard some pressure is applicable by this air, so the molecules of this air is continuously colliding with this wall and exert a pressure on this. So because of that collision of the molecules, the pressure caused is known as the static pressure, right? And you know that we already see that hydrostatic pressure when the fluid is at rest. So we can say that when a fluid is at rest, then at a point the pressure at a point when the fluid is at rest will be equal from all the direction. We already see the Pascal's law. Now we want to study the stagnation pressure. Stagnation pressure is that pressure which could result if the fluid were brought to rest isentropically. if you brought the fluid at rest, right? If suppose the fluid is flowing with some velocity, then the pressure of that fluid at that time will be the static pressure, right, or the normal pressure, which we can say. But if you make that fluid to come to zero velocity, come to rest, and that process if you do isentropically means adiabatically in a reversible process. Isentropically, you know the meaning of isentropic, it is reversible adiabatic, right? If you deaccelerate, or I can say if you deaccelerate the fluid such that its velocity will be zero and that deacceleration will be isentropic, then the pressure at that time is known as stagnation pressure. That means I can say that the entire kinetic energy, right, the entire kinetic energy of the fluid, you know that there are three types of energy which we studied in general: pressure energy, kinetic energy, and the potential energy. If I use the complete kinetic energy of a fluid and convert it into the pressure energy, then that pressure, when the kinetic energy is zero and complete kinetic energy is used as a pressure energy, converted into pressure energy, that time the pressure is known as the stagnation pressure, right? That time the pressure is known as stagnation pressure, and this process shall be carried out in a reversible adiabatic manner only, right? If it is not reversible adiabatic, then we cannot know, called as a stagnation pressure, right? Suppose, let us say, to explain this, we will make one diagram. Based on that diagram, we will be able to understand it better. Suppose we have a pipe into which some fluid is flowing, right? We'll make a diagram here. Suppose in this pipe, I can say that fluid is flowing in this direction. In this pipe, the fluid is flowing in this direction, and I consider a section, let us say I consider a section 1,1 here. I consider a section 1,1 at this point, right? And on this section 1,1, let us take a point A. Let us take a point A. And we installed a U-tube, simply a U-tube here. Suppose like this, if I show you, just near to this A, I installed a U-tube. This U-tube is a closed one. This U-tube is a closed one. Let us draw this first. This is a U-tube, right? This is a U-tube, and it is connected with some pressure measuring device, let us say. Here some pressure measuring device is there. This is closed one. This is pressure measuring device. Pressure measuring device, right? This U-tube is a closed one. And on this fluid, on this tube, let us take one point here. That point is B. This A and B are very close, very near to each other, right? These A and B are very near to each other. And now let us discuss about this stagnation pressure, right? Let us say that the fluid is flowing through this tube, right? And at section 1,1, let us say that velocity and the pressure of the fluid flow is uniform. At section 1,1, we can say pressure here is, let us say, P1, and velocity here, let us say it is V1. And both of them are uniform. They do not vary, right? It is uniform at each and every point. It is uniform. Let us assume it, right? So if I consider a point A on this section, right, just in front of this section, this is a section and I consider a point A here, such that just front of this A we have this U-tube, this elbow-shaped, L-shaped U-tube we have, which is a closed. Here it is closed, right? We have a right angled tube which with one end of this is facing the flow, right? It is facing this flow, and other end is closed, and it is placed along with the pressure measuring device. It will measure the pressure, right? When equilibrium will attain, right, what happens is in this tube liquid will start flowing. In this tube liquid will fill, and after equilibrium this liquid will be at rest, because it is a closed one, right? Up to this volume only liquid will come, and after equilibrium we can say that the velocity of the fluid in this line, in this tube, in this right angled tube, the velocity will be zero. The velocity will be zero after equilibrium, right? So in this tube, if I write here, in this tube, after equilibrium, fluid is at rest, right? Initially some velocity is there when it is not filled. After the equilibrium, when this U-tube, as this L-type tube is completely filled, in that case that fluid is at rest, right? So we can say that at rest, and the pressure at any point in the tube, including the point B, the pressure in this tube, including this point B is just inside the tube. It is just inside the tube. It is in the tube, right? So the pressure in that will be more than A. It is more than A where the flow velocity is there. The pressure at point B, we can say that if we measure it, the pressure at point B will be more than point A. The pressure at point B will be more than point A. Point B is in this tube. It is just at the entry of the tube, right? So we can say that if I apply the Bernoulli equation between point B and A, right? You apply the Bernoulli equation between point A and B. If I write Bernoulli equation, then I can write PA by rho G plus VA square by 2G plus ZA is equal to PB by rho G plus VB square by 2G plus ZB. Right? They are very close to each other, so ZA and ZB are equal. And you know that in this pipe, after equilibrium, fluid is at rest, so this VB is 0. This VB is 0, right? So from this, you can say that PB by rho G is equal to PA by rho G plus VA square by 2G. And if I want to know what is a PB, so PB will be equal to PA plus rho VA square by 2. PB will be equal to PA plus rho VA square by 2. I multiply it with rho G, right? So this PB is known as stagnation pressure. This PB is known as stagnation pressure, right? So we can say that if we consider that the flow is incompressible and non-viscous, so at this, if I apply the Bernoulli equation, then PB will be equal to PA plus rho V square by 2. Right. So if you say that in this stagnation pressure, this PB is known as stagnation pressure. This stagnation pressure has two components. One is PA, and PA is known as static pressure. PA is known as static pressure, and one component is this one, rho VA square by 2. This is the pressure because of this velocity VA at point VA. What is happening here is at point A some velocity is there. When it comes to point B, this velocity, this energy of this kinetic energy of this fluid at point A will be completely converted into pressure. Now the total pressure will be the pressure at point A plus the pressure equivalent to the kinetic energy at A. So this is because of the kinetic energy equivalent, so it is known as dynamic pressure. It is because of the dynamic nature of the fluid flow, so it is known as dynamic pressure. So you can write that stagnation pressure will be equal to static pressure plus dynamic pressure, right? So we can say that this rho V square by 2 is known as the dynamic pressure. So we can write from here, you can write that the static pressure plus dynamic pressure is the stagnation pressure. And if you want to calculate this VA, if you can want to calculate this VA, so this will be equal to, this VA will be equal to PB minus PA, sorry, this will be PB minus PA 2 by rho under root this, right? This will be 2 into PB minus PA divided by rho. This is the velocity at point A. So this is the way if you want to calculate the velocity, right? If in any tube, if you want to calculate the velocity at any point, so by this application, if you apply a, just place a right angled tube here. So by measuring the pressure at B and A, we can easily measure the velocity at point A, right? We can easily measure the velocity at point A. So this is also used to measure the velocity. So if I say that in practice, we can say that fluid is not ideal, right? In practice, in reality, this fluid is not ideal fluid, right? So the pressure which is measured here, let us say it is measuring some pressure, stagnation pressure PB. So this pressure will be less, right? So we can say that if the fluid is not real, if the fluid is real, so if the fluid is real, then at that time, let us say stagnation pressure is PB dash, it will be less than PB. It will be less than PB. Why? Because of the friction, some amount of its kinetic energy will convert into intermolecular energy to overcome the friction. You know this, right? If viscosity is there, if friction is there, to overcome that friction, some of the energy will lost, right? So some of the energy will convert into intermolecular energy to overcome this viscosity. So the kinetic energy which is available now to convert into pressure is less. So the stagnation pressure will be less. So in that case, because of the friction, the stagnation pressure will be less. So if we calculate the actual pressure, then there is a term known as the coefficient of velocity, which I already explained you. So there is a constant come into picture, right? We will discuss it in later when we discuss the pitot tube. So this is the basic difference between the static pressure and the stagnation pressure, right? In our fluid mechanics, only this concept of stagnation pressure is required, right? Stagnation pressure will be more useful for you if you study the compressible flow, in your power plant subject, right? Now, though that compressible flow is not in the syllabus now in the engineering services or in the GATE both, so you need not to study the compressible flow. But if out of the curiosity, if you want to study, then there stagnation pressure will play an important role, and I'll explain how it will play important role when we will discuss the power plant, that compressors, nozzles, right? In that case, how it will play an important role, that is stagnation pressure. Hope your basics of stagnation pressure and static pressure will be cleared by this lecture. Stop.